Hello there, and welcome to the Untitled Film Podcast with Callum and Johnny.
Irish? Are you being Irish?
No, it's not Irish.
I was trying to figure out what mangled accent that was.
Yeah, that's as bad as I'm going to storm out like Russell Crowe. If you think that's Irish, you want your ears looking at.
And was that your attempt at Australian?
No, that's my attempt at Russell Crowe.
Doing Irish. Doing Nottingham.
Yeah, whatever
that's
he's
right.
doing.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be something. I don't know. It's a mess.
It really, really is. But anyway, this week, your show is hosted by someone called Callum. Who's that?
That's me. And who are you?
Someone called Johnny. That's me.
Well, hey, so we're both here.
Evidently. Just about in body, if not in mind.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun time, this episode, I think. Lots of funness to talk about and joy and happiness. Wonderful, wonderful joy.
And I've just finished watching one of the movies, and I can tell the rip tickling fun adventure was had.
Oh, it's going to be a barrel of laughs this week.
Anywho, if you do want to find a barrel of laughs, kind of middle of any week, where might someone find such a thing?
Well, you'd go to our Instagram and also our Facebook, and you'd look for Untitled Film Podcast. And there we ask questions, and we do all sorts of fun things around the campfire. And we ask questions, and this question, going with our theme of fun, is what film most traumatized you? Because my logic and my reasoning was that we'll be reviewing two movies about the Khmer Rouge regime in Cambodia. So this ain't no happy podcast around the campfire. So let's talk about trauma. Do you want to go first, or should I?
Go on then, I'll give you a couple. So, from a childhood age, Bambi is well and truly in the mix there.
Oh, yes.
I still struggle to, think about Bambi too much without welling up, and that's because I first saw it when I was, 3 or 4. And I remember, my parents bought the video, and I just should we watch Bambi? And I would never again. I don't think I ever video got watched a second time. And then I was thinking more recently, the picture you put up, Come and See, is a very traumatic movie, and I recommend anyone watches it because it's a very important movie, I think. And it's just batshit crazy. The director used real ammunition rounds, so when you see the actors being scared, they're probably pretty scared for their lives in case something went wrong. And I also thought I really hate anything to do with eyes. The Slumdog Millionaire, there's that scene where they're burning out the children's eyes. That's pretty dark.
Yeah, I have a problem with eyeballs as well. So a horror movie example would be something like Zombie 2, which was one of those Italian schlock zombies where a zombie pulls a woman through a splintered door and her face and eyes get closer and closer and closer. I can't watch it. But let's go back to the childhood one. Apparently, when I was 6 years old, when we went to see James and the Giant Peach, the bit where the rhino comes through the clouds scared the shit out of me. And apparently, I had to be escorted away from the cinema. I was screaming, apparently. I remember none of this, but my mum says that I was screaming.
It's quite traumatic, to be fair, for a young child.
Yeah, it is. It's a hard one.
Definitely. Do we have any answers?
No, we didn't, except for promoted on Reality Records.
Good old Reality Records, our number one fan.
The whole gang.
Anyway, excellent. And yeah, on from there, we tend to then go into a section we like to call the news. And I've asked Callum for fun news today because the rest of the podcast might not, it's not going to be as, let's say, is not have the level of brevity that some of our podcasts may have.
We'll be talking about some pretty heavy subject matter, yes.
If you think genocides are heavy, then...
I think people tend to, yes.
Anyway, so Callum, what is your first piece of fun news?
Well, I'll start off with the most fun one, and that's Jamie Foxx will play God. And I'm in need. But he's going to play God opposite Mickey Rourke's Devil in Not Another Church Movie. So I think this is going to be a parody of all those weird evangelical Christian movies that glut up the cinemas over there. It might not get much of a release over here because those films don't tend to. So a parody of that probably won't get much seen over here. But I just found the thought of Jamie Foxx playing God and Mickey Rourke in his washed-up state playing the devil to be a highly amusing image. So I've been chuckling about that thought. And I like the idea of taking those films down a peg or two because they're taken very seriously in America. So this is going to be mocking those God's Not Dead, a whole bunch of those, like a million of those films come out and they make loads of money in America and nothing worldwide.
Very good. I thought I would start off with fun things. Who out there likes the internet? Do you like the internet? Yeah,
I'm a fan of the internet, you could say.
So there's the biggest internet video awards of the year. They happen every year. The Streamy Awards was this week.
Ooh, fun.
Do you know what the Streamy Awards are?
Vaguely. I mean, I know a bunch of content creators that go there and are nominated for things, but I've never really paid attention to it, I have to say.
They're basically for everything to do with YouTube, streaming, that kind of stuff. They have lots of different categories. So I'm gonna do a quiz for you, Callum. So if you can guess who wins which categories. I'm not going to do every category, but I'm going to do some. So who do you think won the Creator of the Year?
Let's say Mr. Beast.
It was Mr. Beast. I think that's at least 2 years in a row, possibly more. Collaborator of the Year. You know half of the answer because it's Mr. Beast. Who do you think Mr. Beast collaborated with to win Collaboration of the Year?
To be honest, I only watch Mr. Beast when I'm around yours. I have no idea.
It's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Oh, I didn't know he did something with him.
I didn't either.
Cool.
So that shows how big a thing that was. I've just lost internet connection and lost my...
Your new Wi-Fi is playing up.
Yeah, which is strange because I'm speaking to you over it. But
that's true. Yeah, that is true.
We're back. We're back in the room.
Okay, cool. Right.
Who do you think won the best animated series on YouTube streaming animated series?
There are a bunch of them. They're really good. But I'm hard pressed to remember their names. I know you send some of them to me and I watch an episode or two of them, but I can't remember the name. So
just one that I really like, actually, Hell of a Boss.
Nice. Fun.
I quite like a bit of YouTube animation. There's a few good ones out there. Hell of a Boss I recommend. Murder Drones. And there's a new one that's only got a pilot. I've forgotten its name. Lackadaisy, which is about cats, but who are in the 20s and in Prohibition times.
Is that based on a comic book?
It is based on a very long-running
comic book.
Very long-running
web comic.
Yeah. And then who do you think... I'm just doing names that I know. There's a few names on here, actually. Who do you think won the best technology vlogger?
Oh, I have no idea. I'm going to be honest. I don't know anything about that kind of thing.
Wow. It's Marquez Brownlee, which is pretty, I would have thought, fairly par for the course. Yes Theory, have you heard of them?
No, not really.
Okay.
No.
Yes, there is a YouTube channel where people do things where they're like, you kind of almost have to like say yes, a bit like Yes Man.
Oh, okay.
But as a TV, but as a YouTube channel. They won Best Editing. Best Brand Engagement, Insta360. Well done.
Yes, well done, Insta360. Round of applause all round.
What do you think? This expands out into the real world more. What do you think Brand of the Year is?
Oh, I've no idea.
What is the biggest movie of the year?
Barbie.
Barbie.
So
Barbie
Mattel.
is Brand of the Year. Barbie and Mattel, yeah. Yeah, Brand of the Year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's interesting. Anyway, learning education was Tearzu. Should have been Jetlag the Game, in my opinion, but there we go.
The bastards.
The bastards, indeed. Yeah, that's some things from the internet. Thought I'd bring that in. We don't do the internet very often on here. And that is more lightweight than what we're going to talk about later on. How about you, Callum? What is your second piece of fun, exciting news?
Second bit of fun, exciting news. There's a new trailer out for a movie called The Marsh King's Daughter with Ben Mendelsohn and Daisy Ridley. It's a thriller. And I'm a little bit excited to see where this goes because being a hero role is such a flattening thing for an actor. It's bland every time. It was bland when Daniel Radcliffe did it. So we're not really sure yet if she's a good actor or if she was a bland actor matched with bland material. But the weird thing about Daisy Ridley is that she's made something like 8 movies back to back, and they're just coming out now. So this is going to be the true test. Is she a good actor that couldn't get over the bad dialogue of Star Wars, or is she a bad actor that was perfectly suited to it? Is she Keira Knightley? Is she Emma Watson? And this is going to be the test. And it's a pretty good-looking thriller. I like Ben Mendelsohn a lot, and he's always good as a baddie, and he is the titular Marsh King, and Daisy Ridley is the daughter. So let's see. Hopefully it'll be fun.
I just want to ask a question on that. When you were saying, is she Keira Knightley or is she Emma Watson, who are you saying is good and who are you saying is bad? Because I don't really like either of them, but there we go.
I quite like Keira Knightley. I think she's the best example of that sort of school of acting. Too many teeth and the posh accent. But when she's good, she can be very good. So like Pride and Prejudice, I think, is a deserved Oscar nomination, for example. But she's not great all the time, but she's the best example of that. I think she just Pirates of the Caribbean. No actor could have made that good. Just as Christian Bale and Heath Ledger were originally rumored to be the part that Orlando Bloom played, they would have been equally as bland, even though they're very good actors. So it's just one of those things.
I don't know if I agree with that, but anyway.
At least they wouldn't have been as good as they potentially could be because they're good actors, because that part is so bland.
Fair enough.
So we'll see. We'll see where things shake out.
Fair enough. Anyway, that brings that piece of news to the end. And my second piece of news, so Denis Villeneuve, director of such films as Arrival and Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, has mentioned that actually he decided he wants to make Dune into a trilogy and that there's words on paper for a Dune Part 3. Now, is this going to be Lord of the Rings or is this going to be The Hobbit? Because there's only one book that Dune is based on, and it slightly concerns me that he's going to try and split it into 3. But
dum dum dum, this could be the moment where it all goes wrong, but we'll see. Hopefully, it doesn't.
We shall see. I feel like there's enough of a universe there, but he'll have to add quite a lot of flesh to the bones.
Yes,
and I suppose people always argued that it should have been a TV. Or it wouldn't have had the budget, but it needed. But people have always argued a bit like Watchmen and stuff. It's a bit unfilmable as a movie, as was originally tried to happen in the 80s. So maybe there is enough material there for 3 movies. But I always thought it was planned as a 2-parter. So I always get slightly concerned when they're like, it's a 2-parter, but I think we can add a 3rd part on.
It's certainly enough to give you pause. But you never know. He might pull it out of the bag.
Also, I really hope they don't leave it with like a cliffhanger ending, because let's be honest, the majority of like movies at the box office this year have flopped. Like there has only been, of the kind of like 20 or so tentpole movies that have come out, only 5 or 6 of them probably have even made their budget back. It just doesn't seem, I think there's just too much out there. I think people are a bit cinema fatigued for
I think
so. And I think there's been a couple of big events like Barbenheimer and strangely Super Mario Brothers. I still not quite get that myself, but and obviously Spider-Man and stuff, and they've taken a lot of stuff away, and there's been some really big scalps. Like, who'd have thought the newest Mission Impossible, with all the great hype and the amazing reviews, it might just about break even, but it doesn't look like it at the moment. Like, there's been a lot of big scalps this year.
Yeah, it's been a strange summer. People have just been a bit more discerning, I think, with their money and what they're doing with their spare change. No,
it's been a very strange summer from money. I suspect if you added all of the box office totals up, they probably maybe would equal a normal summer. But I get this vibe that there's a lot of stuff delayed over COVID that's all suddenly come out at once. So it almost feels like you've got 2 years worth of blockbusters out in the space of a year. And I think it's just really saturated the market. I don't think Disney have had a successful movie this year.
Oh, well, except for Guardians, but even that was that was kind of moderately successful. It wasn't huge.
But like outside of that, they've had at least 2 animated films flop. They've had pretty much everything else to do with Marvel's flopped. They had The Little Mermaid flopped. Like, they've not had a successful run this year. I think I saw a someone worked out this year they reckon they've lost about $1 billion already on movies.
It's been a bad year, and also their television isn't doing much better. This new Star Wars show is doing very badly, I think.
Although I suspect, as long as the subscriber numbers stay there with Disney Plus, it's probably fine.
Sure.
I think most people won't get rid of Disney Plus because there's enough back catalogue. But yeah, they don't seem to be getting like great reviews for their new things. That's for sure.
Yeah, so it's all fun for them.
Yeah. In the House of Mouse. I think I'm glad that people are walking with their feet, because I feel like for too long mediocrity has been celebrated. I think people are getting maybe a little bit more discerning with
I think so too. And of course, with these strikes continuing, there's a whole almost half a year where movies haven't been made. It could usher in a period where more mid-budget films are made to fill the gaps because they don't take nearly so long to make when productions come back to life. That's the hope, though. I've heard that a few times from a few people.
Yeah, I think it makes sense as well. We can hope, definitely. Anyway, that is our fun, exciting, super fun news.
I hope you had a barrel of laughs there.
Because there won't be any for the rest of the podcast.
Strap in.
So, Callum, what movies are we talking about this week?
Well, the first one is going to be First They Killed My Father, which is the fourth directorial effort from Angelina Jolie. And just to kind of put you out of your misery, both films are about the war in Cambodia in the mid to late 70s. And then the second film is the more celebrated...
Well, it wasn't a war. It was a genocide that kind of was bookended by two wars.
Yes. Also, we're going to be talking about The Killing Fields, the Roland Joffe film from 1984, which was a big... celebrated, multiple Oscar nominations, one big Oscar win.
And multiple BAFTAs, I think, because I think it is a British production.
It is a British production. So I think it was, we won several at the BAFTAs, and it was nominated for a lot at the Oscars. I think the big take home was Best Supporting Actor because of that character, but we'll get into that. So yes, very cheery subject matter. So first, I guess it's... First, They Killed My Father.
Do you want to take this one away?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. So it's based on the Cambodian author and human rights activist, and I hope I get this pronunciation right, Loang Ung. And it's recounted from her child's point of view, because she's only a very young, that she suffered as a child under the rule of the Khmer Rouge in the mid-70s. A middle-class Cambodian girl sees her family's life ripped apart when the Khmer Rouge invade Cambodia, and they're taken to the work camps, and from there things just get far more harrowing. And yes, it's directed by Angelina Jolie. And Johnny, what did you think of First They Killed My Father?
I think harrowing is a very good word to describe it. I think it's a very interesting movie. Earlier on, we mentioned the movie Come and See, and I think it takes a lot from that, in that you've got this kind of singular protagonist who is a child. In the case of this, a younger child, a 7-year-old child. And it's told very much from their point of view. So it's what they see. It's snippets of adults' conversations. There's, other than like the first intro bit, there's no kind of like news footage or anything. It's her being spoken to by people, or her peering through a door and hearing a conversation with her parents, or hearing a conversation between other people in the village, or seeing things out of the corner of her eyes she's maybe not meant to see, and kind of piecing what's happening together. And it's told in a kind of a linear format over the course of, I assume, 3 years, because that's the war. Phnom Penh fell in, I think, January 1975, and I think I think it was December or January 9. I think it was either just kind of between December 88 and January 89 was when the Vietnamese really kind of took the country back. So not took it back, took it over. So yeah, it's told within that time, and it kind of shows what happens to her family. I think it's incredibly well shot, incredibly moving, because the fact that it's told from the point of a child. And obviously the thing with children is they're quite, I think there's, in The Room, there's a really good expression that you got him out while he's still rubber. They're kind of quite They just kind of get on with things. Like they get sad about certain things, but they kind of almost can more easily brush things off. Like it seems anyway. I'm sure not in the long run, but in the short run, and kind of like just her kind of, it was almost like just plodding through this horrible mayhem that's going on. And yeah, no, I think it tells the story very well. It tells it from an interesting point of view. It clearly really cares about its subject matter. All the acting is brilliant, and I suspect there's a lot of people in it who are first-time actors, both the adults and the kids. Yeah, so overall, really, really liked it. How about you?
Yeah, no, very much the same. I think it's worth saying that Angelina Jolie is someone, it's not lip service for her. She does really care because she has an adopted child from Cambodia. She is a citizen of Cambodia, I recently learned. And the script is co-written by the person whose memoir it was based on, Loong Ung. So it has a real sense of authenticity. You don't get the sense like this is Hollywood invading in order to tell a sob story or, emotionally manipulative sort of ooh care sort of movie. It's not.
She really fell in love with Cambodia when she went to film Tomb Raider there, and I think it's had a massive affinity with the place ever since.
I didn't know that was the reason, but yes,
that was the first time she went to Cambodia was when they filmed Tomb Raider there.
But you do get the sense that she really cares. She has a very good attention for detail. Her directorial efforts to this point have been mixed. This is her fourth feature. The ones before this, including probably the most high-profile one, was Broken, and she also did something that could only be called a vanity project with her and Brad Pitt, where she was credited as Angelina Jolie Pitt. And those kind of fell a bit flat. They were a bit damp. This, you can sense that she isn't doing this for plaudits or for praise. You get the sense that she does this because this is the story that she cares about. So it's filmed in the native language. It's not done by actors who are putting on accents, American actors, or actors speaking in English but with accents or something like that. This isn't done for the audience's benefit. The direction is very deliberate. It's very much a case of the camera lingers over shots. It follows at a footstep pace rather than trying to ramp up, because there are many harrowing moments. There's children turned into child soldiers, shown how to make landmines. There's a scene where one of the young women has to walk very slowly through a minefield because she knows that if she takes one wrong step, she can get blown up, and people are getting blown up around her. Someone like Oliver Stone in Platoon, for example, would want to add flaming red eyes or one of his other weird little tricks, and so many other directors would have done one of their big things to go, ooh, care, to the audience that probably doesn't know a lot about this. And to be fair, I didn't know. I knew the broad sweep of this history. I didn't know very specific details. So that's absolutely the way to do it, to take a deliberate pace rather than to over-egg things or dramatize things. I think it's a very intelligent approach, and hopefully this will be seen in her next directorial efforts, because I think she's going to continue this rather than acting. I think this is her real passion. So hopefully we'll see more of this kind of work from Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. I think it's very realist, and obviously very kind of close to the memoirs, and I think it tries to show the humanity within the evil, that everyone involved is just humans, and that they're kind of all trying to, I suppose, just get on in something that they don't understand. Everything's very quickly changed in their world, and they don't really know. I suppose no one really knows their place in it, and that's what's quite a thing with the whole Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot and everything. He basically wanted to rip the country back to nothing and create kind of like the
whole year zero thing, isn't it?
Yeah, the whole year zero thing, and start from scratch. And he almost wanted to go back to, I think he called it like a socialist collective farming community, and then over like 10, 20, 30 years develop it into a communist country with mechanized machines and starting to become very self-sufficient and things. And in that kind of regard. He didn't mind breaking a few eggs, and by a few eggs I mean killing a quarter of the population of the country in the space of 3 years. What a massive arsehole. But yeah, and I think this does a really good job of showing that there's still a lot of humanity within people, even in this horrendous situation, and even more humanity within the kids. There's a part in it where a lot of kind of kids just meet up in a kind of refugee camp, and they all immediately just make friends and like, hi, let's well, I think we should all stick together. I have a chicken. Let's cook the chicken and eat it together. And it just like in everything so horrible going on. I think it just shows like the nice amounts of humanity. And I think that's what this film does incredibly well. It's kind of hard to criticize through the prism of a normally kind of directed film because of the way it's done with child actors who, are new to this in most cases, and it's kind of trying to have a really realistic tone and things to it. Like there's no tricks really. There's no like special effects or CGI or like anything going on. It just tells the story. It's a bit like, it almost feels like Ron Howard could have possibly directed this movie as well if he really cared about the subject.
Yeah, it's very
it's like very meat and potatoes.
It is very much so,
but I don't know how you would do that any differently without then starting to like take away from the story. The story's what's important here, and I think it does that incredibly well.
No, absolutely. I saw some reviews that were kind of mild that said that
quite a lot, like 7 out of 10 and stuff, which I don't think is fair to it.
The pacing is glacial, is what they said, or like, well, how else were you supposed to tell this? What did you want? But you're right.
It's not an action movie. It's not
exactly. Like people, you can't. That would be exploitation, and you're right. And I think this is something that's true about a lot of actors who turn into directors. They're far more interested, rather than doing flashy camera work or editing tricks or special effects and things, that they very much tend to put a close-up look on the actors because that's what they know. That's what they know first and foremost, and anything they learn about directing and writing comes after they've learned the craft of acting. So they tend, especially with their first few features, tend to have handheld camera approaches and have it close on actors, and then have some mid and wide shots just to get establishing shots and things like that. And very much what Angelina Jolie does. It's very economic filmmaking. But people often confuse economic filmmaking with, if it's not flashy, it's not good. Because if it's not flashy, I can't point to that thing and go, cool, blimey, look at the direction there. But of course, to be transparent, to be invisible, is a form of good directing, and I think that's something Angelina Jolie does very well here. And the script is very economical as well. It makes you care without doing what I like to call "Mother never took me to the zoo" type dialogue, where people deliver soliloquies. Yeah, exactly. Or soliloquies or monologues and things like that. It's very simple. It's like a scene where they're sitting around eating the kind of meager thing that they've managed to find because they're being starved to death in this camp. And they go, what are you looking forward to eating when you get back home? Oh, I'm looking forward to this. And, that's enough. I know that this family cares about each other. I know that they love each other. That's all I need to know. That's all I need to see.
No, absolutely. No, I think for the story it wants to tell, it does an incredibly good job of it. No fuss, no muss, just like gets to the point.
Absolutely.
And I think the slow pacing is important because I think a lot of the slow pacing is reading people's facial expressions and what's going on and what's is happening. I think
no, I agree very much.
I think it does a very good job of that. I think that probably brings us to the end of the review for First They Killed My Father.
Yes, I think so.
And I think that about leaves us time for an advertisement break. And welcome back from the advertisement break.
I'd buy that for $1.
I was hoping you weren't going to do it on this episode because we're meant to be really respectful and nice, and you have to go and make a joke.
Have to do it.
Anyway, as I was saying, welcome back to a very special episode of Untitled Film Podcast about the Cambodian genocide. Callum has just made a joke.
He's whipped his serious voice out, people.
I have.
He's doing the very hushed thing.
So the second movie we're going to talk about this week is the 1984 classic, The Killing Fields. So The Killing Fields is the story of death I've fucked up pronunciation already. Dith Prom. And I've actually forgotten the journalist's name because I care less about him.
Sydney.
Sydney, what's his last name?
Shannonberg.
Sydney Shannonberg or Scheinberg. Sydney Schanberg. Sydney Schanberg was a writer for, I want to say, the New York Times.
Yep.
And he was covering the Vietnam War from the Cambodian side, and his translator / partner in crime, some would say, Dith Prom, who is Cambodian, caught in the fall of Phnom Penh, which is when the Americans very sheepishly pulled out, and the Khmer Rouge rolled in and took over Phnom Penh, at which point they hide out in the French embassy for a while until it is decided that all Cambodians must be given back to the Khmer Rouge and everyone else is going to be given free passage to the airport, at which point two very different stories happen. Dith Prom has to lose everything about him and pretend that he is just... that's not an expression, but that he is a taxi driver from Phnom Penh. Because anyone who was a journalist or a doctor or a teacher or anything like that were often killed by the Khmer Rouge because they were seen as possibly being subversive people. And while Sydney goes back to the US with Dith's family, who he'd already got out, and tries in vain to find him, and on goes a very important movie. Callum, what are your thoughts on The Killing Fields?
Well, you're right. It is a very important movie, and it is a classic. I was trying to pinpoint whether 1984 was still in the period of New Hollywood, because of New Hollywood was when auteur filmmakers were given quite a lot of money to do, to tell very important stories, to tell kind of much richer stories, but with Hollywood type money. And I was looking on Wikipedia, which isn't the best source, and they seem to say that it stopped in 1983. But I'm going to say that this is New Hollywood adjacent, because it's 1984. It's still a lot of money coming around. So they can spare a lot of time and expense on a story that needs to be told. So here you have cast members like John Malkovich and Sam Waterston, and the late Julian Sands, who died recently this year, to tell a very important story, to give it a rich context, to give it splash and spectacle, but not in a way like we were talking with First They Killed My Father. You don't need splash, you don't need spectacle, not in a way that's exploitative, just in the way that a movie of this size requires a budget, because unlike First They Killed My Father, which is from a child's point of view, so it's very low to the ground, this tells it in a broader sweep, both in America and in Cambodia. And you need to feel the trauma on both sides, both from Dith, who is very much caught in the thick of it, especially when he can't leave as the Western journalists do, and also the guilt that the journalist feels when he leaves him over there. And he's trying to explain away. I've sent hundreds of letters. I'm trying to get him out. I'm trying to do everything I can. And people are like, but are you though? And I like that sort of push and pull between the two stories. And yeah, the one about the journalist is slightly less interesting, just because one is walking through, after everything that he goes through, walking through literal killing fields of the title, and the other is collecting an award at a ceremony and feeling guilty. It sidesteps the issue of a lot of modern movies, the white person solves racism, white savior trope, by making Sydney quite so ineffectual. His guilt is very moving and very touching, but you're kind of on the side of John Malkovich when John Malkovich says, you didn't do nearly enough to get him out. You're going to go, yeah, I kind of see both points here. But yeah, you had the chance earlier and you said, oh, well, we'll come back to the subject. So it's a very humanly told story for that reason, in that it doesn't quite let him off the hook, although his guilt is portrayed in a realistic manner.
He doesn't really do any of the saving, put it that way.
Exactly. For a white savior, he's pretty bad at it. And this is probably the best I've seen Sam Waterston. I've rated him as an actor, but I've never been of the opinion that he's like one of the best of the bests. But this is honestly the best I've seen him. Maybe this and the adaptation of The Great Gatsby, in which he's also very good. But this is the best I've seen him. And of course, Dith Pran is played by a first-time actor who someone who actually lived through this. Hopefully I get the name right. Hang S. Ngor, who won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, and then unfortunately was tragically murdered not so long, about 10 years or so after this film was made. But it's so very moving here. I mean, he really is a star performer. This is like a movie star being made, which unfortunately didn't translate because of Hollywood racism at the time. No other films really materialized for him. But it's a star performance from a non-actor. And he holds his own just as much against John Malkovich, Julian Sands, Sam Waterston, in order to win his Oscar. But no, this is a fantastic movie.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree. I really, I really like this movie. There's a lot about it I like as well. I think it really portrays that kind of like the madness I think first off, it doesn't let America off the hook. And I think it shows in two ways how America led to the Khmer Rouge in the first part in the bombing campaigns and things in Cambodia, which really led rise to the Khmer Rouge, because the people in these small villages were like, hang on, why is the government aligning and helping the Americans when they're being massive dicks and bombing our country and killing our friends and family? I think it starts to show that at the start. And I think then it does a good job of showing how America just abandons the place. And then it does a very good job of showing the fall of Phnom Penh and how that all happens. And then it also does a very good job of showing the depravity of the Khmer Rouge's rule. And it also does a very good job of telling this story, which is at the core of it, of these two people who both kind of wanted the same outcomes and ended up with, very different things for a long period of time, for a few years, because of, where they're from, the color of their skin and things. And I think so there's a huge... I think it's a really complex story that's told incredibly well. It's incredibly harrowing at times. And I also really like it technically. I think it looks very good. I think it's shot very well. I think there's really a brilliant shot early on where they're both standing on like a wooden hut. I suppose the only way to call it, like a wooden house or something, in a field, and you've got this beautiful sunset behind it which is kind of how when I think of Southeast Asia, having lived out there, kind of think of it at sunset, that kind of really beautiful over, big rice paddies with the beautiful kind of round trees in the background. So I think from that point of view, I really enjoy how it's shot. I think the action scenes are done incredibly well. I think it feels very realistic. And then I also really love Mike Oldfield did the soundtrack for it, and it's incredibly chaotic, and it shows the kind of, it's really dramatic and very 80s, but it works incredibly well. And I like how that's done and how that works on it as well. So just kind of across the whole thing, there's not much I don't like about this movie. I really, really enjoy it. So, and I think, all the acting is fantastic, and it tells a really important story very well.
Yes, it's very propulsive, as you're saying, the action, but also the action in the small scale. Like there's a scene where they're trying to find a camera in these places that are being abandoned to try and forge a passport to get him out. And they've got to create a makeshift dark room, find a camera, any camera, doesn't matter what kinds, just find a camera. And, there are times when you're clenching your fist and your fingernails are digging into your hand, because it's just incredibly kind of white knuckled. It's so suspenseful for a scene where they're just trying to get a camera to forge a passport. So, and it equally holds up to something like scenes of bombings or, explosions. And it's very tight in that way. It's also very good at showing the privilege. I love the early scenes where Sam Waterston's going, I had to wait in a plane. I stared at the back of some guy's seat reading the pamphlet on the plane. It's like that kind of privilege. And then he's shown just how wrong he is in that kind of respect. He's this journalist, I am the important journalist here. It's just a very well judged performance, and to hang a character on, because like you said, with this kind of story, you need a central thing, and these two guys are real people, but you need something that, it's all very well and good to tell a polemic or to get the soapbox out, but you need to tell an entertaining story, and to tell this story of a real life friendship that had all these ups and downs, and someone who's learning from being privileged to being incredibly humbled. it's incredibly moving. It's all very well judged.
I also think, and I think possibly what helps it be more so well judged, is that it was only made 5 years after the fall of the Khmer Rouge. So, but the fallout for it was still very much happening. Vietnam was still occupying Cambodia at the time, and things. So the story, I suppose, was obviously very fresh in people's minds, and you don't really get that so much anymore. Like, you occasionally get it, but it's very rare you get an event happens and the movie comes out about it 5 years later.
I can't think of a recent example.
The only ones I could think of, there was the Boston bombing one with Mark Wahlberg, the Boston Marathon bombing one.
There was.
And there was another one with Mark Wahlberg on the Deep Horizons oil well platform, and there was the other one about the terrorists on the train where they used the real
guys, the Clint Eastwood film.
But other than that, it just doesn't seem to happen anymore. And I think that it's quite an impressive feat to have the story happen and then be able to contextualize it and make a good movie out of it in 5 years. I think it's quite impressive.
Absolutely. No, I very much agree.
And again, I think it was at a time when not everyone knew. People saw it on the news and stuff, but I don't think people really knew what happened. And those shots of Dith falling into the rivers just full of bones and bodies and things, I think just really brought home to, 1.5 million people in 3 years in a population of 7 million people. What that is, that's like, it's like you walk into a room and there's 4 people in the room and someone shoots someone in the head, and that's across the whole country for in the space of 3 years. It was just horrendous. And I think people need to remember when people look at these, look at Russia or wherever, these authoritarian governments, what's happening in a lot of places in Africa at the minute, and turn a blind eye and go, oh, but I can't afford to go on to buy a new car at the moment or whatever. And you kind of look at what can happen, and people need to, remember what happens in the world sometimes when they're having a first world problem moment.
No, we should all be humbled by scenes that are playing out in the real world.
And also how quickly things can slip and how quickly you can let authoritarians take over, because, even in Western countries, you only got to look at France and Marine Le Pen, or here and Suella Braverman, or the States and Donald Trump, and think, these are people that if they could would, I'm pretty sure, take over and get rid of any due process, and then it's a slippery slope after that point, as Russia has found out in the space of like 10 years or however long it's been that Putin's been in charge.
Scarily so. So no laughs here.
No. I did promise you at the start of this episode, no laughs. Anyway, but yeah, I think that probably wraps up the review of these two movies. So Callum, what are you going to give First They Killed My Father?
I think I'm going to give it an 8. I think I would nearly at a 9, but I think an 8 is good. I might need to watch it again to get the full kind of grasp of it, but at the moment it's an 8. I think it's very lean and very economically made, and it's well judged in its smallness and of telling a huge story, but in such a small scale way through the eyes of a child. It's very well judged by Angelina Jolie, and I think she's a very smart and smart director who clearly cares a lot. Sorry, I got my tongue twisted there. No, I think an 8 out of 10.
I think I'm gonna go that a little bit step further and give it that 9. I think there's a few issues around maybe tightness. At times, maybe there could have been 10 minutes cut out and stuff, but other than that, I don't have much to complain about it, and I think it's hands down Angelina Jolie's best directorial work.
Take a run at that again.
Yeah, directorial work. And yeah, I really like it. I think it's an important movie, and if you haven't seen it, go and switch your Netflix on and watch it, but probably when you're in the right headspace.
Absolutely.
And Callum, The Killing Fields, what did you think?
Well, I'd love to give it a 10 out of 10, but it ends with John Lennon's Imagine, so 1 out of 10, obviously. No, I'm kidding, of course. 10 out of 10, it is a very important work. I think this is one of the best films of the 80s, possibly. And, it's very humanizing, but it knows how to mix the large and the small scale. It knows how to humanize its story. It knows how to, in today's climate of the white savior narrative, which isn't really going away in terms of stories like this, so easily could have slipped that way. It avoids all the worst sort of trappings and tropes. So I think this is a masterpiece, except for the last 2 minutes when Imagine by John Lennon plays, in which I want to burn the house down.
I'm going to defend John Lennon's Imagine. I think this is probably the only very good use of it in a movie, but I think it has its place. But no, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 as well. I can't really fault it. I think it's a masterpiece in cinema. And if you haven't seen it, get on your Amazon Prime right now and watch it, because you need to watch this movie.
It's a very important film. You should watch it.
But also good. It's not just important, it's good as well.
Yes, of course.
I think that probably brings us to the end of this episode. We'll be back next week, I'm sure, with something more.
We promise you laughs next week. We promise. Yeah. Don't leave us.
No. I hope you enjoyed this, a very special episode. It might be, depending on my schedule this week, the next episode might be broadcast from Jordan. So probably a man in Jordan. So yeah. Come and tune in, and if you haven't watched them, go watch these two movies now.
We didn't mention it was our 1 year anniversary, did we?
No, actually we didn't. It was last week was our 1 year anniversary.
Hooray!
So yeah, been doing this for a whole year now, and I'm still haven't killed Callum, so that is good.
I'd buy that for $1.
That's it. It's a good thing we're doing remotely today. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, peace out, guys. Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Sorry, Rob.